The desert was a furnace of wind and fire. Every aircraft had turned back except hers. Captain Aria Kane gripped the Apache's controls, eyes on the storm ahead. Somewhere in that chaos, a SEAL team was dying, and she wasn't leaving. One pilot, one mission, no retreat. If courage like this moves you, subscribe and join the flight. The desert night was alive with wind, carrying grit that whipped across the canopy. Lightning flashed along the horizon, briefly illuminating the jagged canyon walls below. Every aircraft in the sector had already turned back. Every pilot except her. Captain Aria Kane adjusted her helmet, scanning the cockpit instruments. The Apache shuddered as she banked against the storm's edge. Radio static hissed. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Somewhere in that chaos, SEAL Team Echo was trapped. Somewhere they were calling out. "Command," she said, voice steady but low. "I'm still in position. I see nothing, but I'm holding." A pause, then a clipped reply. "Kane, all air assets are to return. The storm's too dangerous. You're ordered to disengage immediately." She exhaled slowly, hands tightening on the cyclic. "Negative," she said. "Until I see body bags. I'm not calling it over." Static crackled, then silence. She adjusted the throttle, nudging the bird closer to the storm wall. Dust whipped around the landing skids, and the Apache tilted like it was fighting the wind itself. Every second stretched long and thin, and in that stretch she could almost hear the SEALs screaming over the canyon gunfire. Almost. Her co-pilot, Warrant Officer Miguel Torres, cleared his throat. "Captain, you're flying blind. Comms are fading. If that storm grabs us—" "I know," she interrupted, glancing at him briefly. "And if I don't, they die." He opened his mouth, then shut it again. He trusted her. And damn it, he knew she would not quit. Through the darkness, faint signals flickered across the sensors. A distant heat signature, a weak radio ping. Kane leaned forward, twisting the controls, banking the Apache toward it. The canyon walls loomed. Shadows danced along the rocks. "Got something," she muttered. "Rourke? That you?" A crackling response barely made it through. "Yeah, we're pinned. Heavy fire. Can't." The line cut out, leaving only static. Kane's jaw tightened. She circled once, twice, searching. The storm's roar seemed to echo every heartbeat. Lightning split the clouds, and she caught a glimpse of movement below. A figure darting across sand and shadow. A flash of dark green, a rifle glinting in the lightning. "There," she said, pointing. "I see one. Hold on." Miggs pressed his hand to the panel, eyes wide. "You can't see the whole team from here, Aria." Doesn't matter," she snapped. "We'll find them all. Just keep me steady." The Apache shuddered, wind clawing at every surface. She felt it trying to push her off course, but her hands were locked, unyielding. Every second, every heartbeat, every flicker of lightning was a line between survival and death, and she wouldn't let it break her. She leaned forward again, scanning the canyon floor, listening for any hint of life, any trace of movement, any sound of the men who were counting on her. Around her, the desert night raged. Around her, the storm roared, and she refused to leave. "Command," she muttered again into the headset, voice quiet but sharp. "I'm still here. I'm not leaving." And the storm answered with silence. The faint ping of a radio signal crackled through the static. Kane's eyes snapped to the comm panel. "Rourke? Is that you?" she called, voice tense. "Captain, we're pinned. Multiple wounded. Enemy closing in fast." Came the reply, broken and strained. "Need immediate support. Can't hold." The signal cut abruptly, leaving only static hissing in her headset. Kane cursed under her breath, twisting the cyclic to keep the Apache steady against the storm's gusts. Miggs glanced at her, jaw tight. "They're close, Aria. We can't see the whole canyon. And now Command's uplink's dead. We're flying blind." Kane didn't answer immediately. She studied the instruments, the faint heat signatures on the sensors, the occasional glint of movement below. Each flash of lightning painted the canyon floor in harsh white light, revealing shadows of men crouched and moving between cover. Command says all aircraft are to return. They're calling it too dangerous. Miggs added, voice low. We're on our own if we go in. Her grip on the cyclic tightened, knuckles white. She tilted the Apache closer to the canyon wall, letting the wind buffet the skids. We find them, she said firmly. That's the mission. They're alive, and we're not leaving until they're safe. Miggs shook his head, but didn't argue. Copy that. But we don't even know what we're flying into. Kane leaned forward, eyes scanning the shadowed rocks. The heat sensors flickered, showing blurred shapes huddled behind low ridges. Gunfire cracked below. Somewhere in that chaos, a man went down, and she felt it. A tight, almost physical pang in her chest. They're moving, she said, pointing toward a faint glimmer. Their left flank. Keep us steady. Static hissed in her headset again. A faint voice broke through, distorted. CPT. Kane need cover. She swallowed. Hold on. I see you. I'll mark your path. Miggs tapped the console nervously. Captain, visibility's dropping fast. One wrong move, we hit the canyon wall. Kane's jaw tightened. Then we don't move wrong. She adjusted the throttle, dipping the nose to line up on the figures below. The Apache shuddered violently as wind clawed against the rotor blades, but she kept the bird steady. Lightning flashed again, briefly illuminating the seals crouched in the sand. Kane squinted. There they are, she muttered almost to herself. All of you. I've got you. Miggs let out a slow breath. You really are insane, you know that? She smiled, faint, tight-lipped. Maybe, but it works. The static returned, louder now, but no command from HQ. Kane leaned back, hands firm on the controls. The storm roared around them, cutting off everything else, and for the first time it didn't matter. All right, she said quietly, eyes locked on the canyon floor. No turning back. We go in blind. Let's bring them home. Miggs nodded, checking the targeting panels. Then let's hope blind is enough. The Apache tilted, and the night swallowed them. Below, in the storm's shadows, the seals waited, and the hunt began. The Apache lurched as the wind slammed into its rotor blades. Sand and dust whipped across the canopy, scratching the glass and masking the faint glow of the instruments. Kane gritted her teeth, leaning forward, hands steady on the cyclic. Each gust felt like a wave in an angry ocean. Hold her steady, she muttered to Miggs. We're almost there. Miggs swallowed hard. Almost where, Captain? I can barely see the instruments. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes scanned the storm, seeking any sign of heat or movement. The sensors flickered under the interference, and static filled the headset with crackles and pops. Lightning split the clouds, revealing the jagged desert ridges for a heartbeat. Then darkness swallowed them again. Got the beacon, she said finally, voice sharp. Rourke's signal. Canyon lit by gunfire. There. Miggs leaned forward, peering through the canopy. You're nuts. That's not a path. That's a death trap. Kane's jaw tightened. It's a trap we fix. She adjusted the throttle, pushing the Apache closer to the storm wall. The bird shuddered violently, and she felt the tail sway under the gusts. Every nerve screamed, but her hands didn't falter. Brace yourself, she said quietly. We're going in. Static hissed, then a faint voice broke through. CPT. Kane. We're holding, just can't. Hang on, she said, cutting him off. I see you. You're not alone. She banked hard, letting the Apache dive slightly to cut into the wind. Dust and sand lashed against the windshield, blurring the figures below into ghostly shapes. Miggs gripped the panel. You're going too low. If we hit that ridge. We don't hit it, Kane said, jaw tight. We fly it. Eyes on the beacon. A flash of lightning revealed the seals moving between shadows. Kane froze the sight, then whispered, There they are. Stay with me. Her hands moved instinctively, adjusting pitch and yaw as the storm tried to tear the Apache apart. Every movement counted. One wrong tilt, one missed gust, and they'd collide with the canyon wall. Miggs exhaled, You really think we're going to make it? She didn't smile, just kept her eyes locked on the faint flicker of the beacon. We have to. That's the mission. The roar of the wind filled the cockpit. Sand scratched against metal. The smell of hot hydraulics and ozone from lightning hung in the air. Kane leaned over the controls, listening to the static in her headset, trying to pick up any additional signals from the SEALs. Captain, Miggs said finally, voice quiet, you're insane. But if anyone could do this, it's you. Her lips tightened into a thin line. Not insane. Focused. The canyon yawned below, a dark, jagged river of stone and shadow. Kane dipped the nose of the Apache into the storm, following the faint glow of gunfire, letting the beacon guide them. Every second stretched like an eternity. Almost there, she muttered. Just a little further. We find them. That's the mission. And with that, the Apache dove deeper into the storm, engines straining, blades slicing through the wind, carrying them toward the trapped SEALs. The canyon erupted below. Gunfire lit the night, tracer rounds streaking through the dark like angry sparks. Kane gritted her teeth, scanning the enemy convoy moving toward the SEALs. The first Hellfire missile locked on its target. Lock acquired, she said calmly, though her heart thumped. Firing. The missile launched, screaming through the storm. It struck the left flank of the enemy line. Dust and fire erupted, sending vehicles skidding off the rocky trail. The SEALs had space to move, even if just a little. Good hit, Miggs said, voice strained but steady. Kane didn't reply. She was already tracking another group of enemy fighters. She adjusted the throttle, dipping the Apache lower into the canyon. Wind tore at the blades, and lightning flashed, revealing the jagged cliffs closing in. Then a deafening explosion shook the cockpit. A shockwave slammed against the fuselage. Miggs cried out, slumping against the panel. Kane's eyes widened. Miggs! She yelled, twisting around. Blood streaked his temple. He barely lifted his head. I'm fine. Kinda, he stammered, voice weak. Kane's jaw tightened. Her hands moved instinctively, stabilizing the Apache. The targeting system blinked and went dark. The instruments flickered under the storm's interference. She leaned close to him. I'll fly, she whispered, voice tight. You just hang on. Miggs nodded, barely conscious, gripping the edge of his seat. Kane adjusted the cyclic with one hand, firing the cannon with the other. Her shots sprayed over enemy positions, keeping their heads down. Captain, Miggs croaked. We can't. You can't what? Kane snapped, eyes sharp. We do this. That's the mission. You trust me, right? His eyes flickered up. Always. A blast from an RPG shook the Apache again. Sand and debris slapped against the canopy. Kane tilted the nose sharply to avoid a collision with a rock face. Every movement was precise. Every second counted. Her breathing slowed as fury replaced shock. She couldn't afford fear. She couldn't afford hesitation. Every beat of the rotor was a lifeline. Every strike from the gun a promise. They will survive. The SEALs below moved, inching toward cover. Kane adjusted the targeting manually, following heat signatures, tracing their path. The enemy regrouped, but she stayed ahead, keeping them pinned with a combination of cannon fire and strategic maneuvering. Miggs coughed, blood on his lips. Kane glanced at him once. We'll get out of this, she muttered. Just stay with me. The storm howled around them. Lightning flashed, illuminating the Apache like a blade cutting through darkness. Dust filled the air, coating the cockpit in grit. Kane leaned forward, every nerve focused, every instinct firing. She was alone now, symbolically and literally, but the mission was still alive. Hold together, Miggs, she whispered, more to herself than him. We get them all. That's the line we hold. And with that, she banked the Apache deeper into the chaos. Hellfire ready, dust in her eyes, fury in her veins. The fight had truly begun. The canyon echoed with gunfire, tracer rounds flashing like broken lightning. Kane leaned over the controls, eyes locked on the SEALs below. Every movement of the Apache was precise, deliberate, almost like a dance with the storm. "Rourke," she said into the headset, voice steady. "Where are you exactly?" "Left ridge," he replied, breath ragged. "We can't advance. They've got us pinned. Need air cover to move now." Kane's eyes flicked to the sensors. Enemy fighters were regrouping, spreading out along the canyon walls. She adjusted the throttle, dipping the Apache closer to the canyon floor. Her floodlight cut through the swirling dust and lightning, casting moving shadows over the rocks. She fired the cannon in short bursts, aiming not just at targets but at areas to create the illusion of multiple aircraft. Each flash of fire and rumble of the Apache sounded like reinforcement to the enemy below. Miggs groaned from the co-pilot seat, leaning weakly against the console. "Captain, we're running on scraps of ammo. If they figure out it's just us." "They won't," Kane interrupted sharply, voice calm. "They think they're facing a full squadron. Keep steady." Below, Rourke moved his team, creeping along boulders and shadowed ridges. "Captain," he said, voice filled with awe, "whoever's up there, she's saving our asses." Kane's lips twitched briefly. "I hope you appreciate the view from down there." She banked the Apache, strafing another enemy position. Dust and debris sprayed across the canyon, masking the SEAL's movement. Miggs coughed, brushing blood from his temple. "You're insane," he muttered. "Maybe," Kane said. Her eyes never left the ground. "But it works." The SEALs moved a few meters forward, staying under the cover of her floodlights and fire. Kane fired another round, the cannon shaking the cockpit. Each shot was calculated to hold the enemy in place, to delay them just enough. "Captain," Rourke said quietly, almost a whisper, "you're keeping us alive." Kane didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her hands moved like clockwork, adjusting pitch and yaw, strafing, simulating reinforcements, and keeping the enemy unsure. Every second counted. Every movement mattered. The storm howled around them, rain and sand pelting the cockpit. Yet Kane stayed focused, her mind a sharp line between the SEALs below and the chaos above. Miggs' eyes flickered toward her, admiration mixed with fear. "You're a mad genius," he said, weak but steady. "I'm focused," Kane corrected, voice tight. "That's all that counts right now." A flash of lightning revealed the enemy pulling back slightly, hesitant to advance under the illusion of overwhelming air support. Kane banked the Apache slightly, adjusting the floodlight to cover the SEAL's retreat path. Rourke's voice came through again, this time calm but relieved. "Move up. Go now. They're hesitating." Kane smiled faintly, almost imperceptible, and nodded to herself. She adjusted the controls, keeping the enemy in place while the SEALs advanced safely. For the first time tonight, her reputation shifted in her own mind. Not reckless, not stubborn, not defiant. She was the shield, the line they couldn't cross, and she would hold it. The Apache shuddered as Kane checked the fuel gauge. Barely a quarter tank remained. Half of her instrument panel flickered and went dark, leaving only the essentials alive. The storm's gusts rattled the canopy, and sand scratched against the glass like tiny knives. Miggs groaned, leaning against the side console. "Captain, fuel's critical. Some of our systems are offline. We can't keep this up." Kane didn't answer at first. Her eyes were locked on the canyon below, where the SEALs moved under her floodlight. Every tracer round, every shadowed movement, every flash of gunfire was a heartbeat in the mission. Static crackled in her headset. Then Colonel Shaw's voice broke through, strained and commanding. "Kane, this is command. You've done enough. Return to base. Disengage immediately. You're risking too much." She glanced at the instruments, then at the glowing canyon below. Her jaw tightened. "They're not done, sir. So neither am I." "Captain," Shaw snapped, "you're out of fuel. You can't hold the line alone. Pull back now." Kane's hand tightened on the cyclic. "I pull back," she said, voice calm. "The SEALs die. That's not an option." Miggs coughed. Blood streaked across his temple. "Aria, they're serious. Engines are strained." One wrong move and... I know, she said, cutting him off. Her eyes scanned the canyon. The seals were still pinned, moving inch by inch, their shadows flickering between rocks and dust clouds. We keep them alive. That's what matters. Shaw's voice hesitated in the static. Kane, you don't have to. I do, she said firmly. Listen, sir, I'll keep them covered. I'll get us both out of here. But right now, they're counting on me. I can't stop. The Apache jolted as a gust hit the tail rotor. Kane adjusted instinctively, muscles burning from holding the cyclic steady. Dust and debris filled the cockpit. The floodlight illuminated the enemy positions again, catching their movements. She fired a short burst from the cannon, forcing them back. Mig's eyes widened. Captain, you're insane. She didn't smile. Focused, she corrected, voice tight. That's the difference. Below, the seals inched closer to cover. Each meter they gained was a victory. Kane banked the Apache slightly, keeping the enemy pinned without exposing her position too much. The sensors flickered. Half of them were dead. She relied on instinct, following heat signatures and the faintest glimmers of movement. Almost there, Kane whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Keep moving. Just a little more. Static crackled again, Shaw's voice softer this time. Kane, be careful. We don't want to lose you too. Her eyes didn't leave the canyon. We'll all get out, she said quietly, her voice almost a promise. That's the mission. Miggs leaned back slightly, closing his eyes. You really don't quit, do you? No, Kane said, tightening her grip on the controls. Not when they're still breathing. The Apache groaned under the strain, fuel warning blinking. Kane adjusted the throttle, dipping low into the canyon, letting every ounce of skill and instinct keep them in the fight. Below, the seals moved, inching toward safety, and Kane refused to let them down. The canyon shook with the roar of engines and gunfire. Enemy reinforcements poured in, armored vehicles and riflemen spreading across the desert floor. The seals had reached the extraction point, but the evac chopper hovered just beyond range, unable to land under the hail of bullets. Kane adjusted the throttle, tilting the Apache low. Her rotors churned the sand into clouds, kicking up dust that blinded enemy gunners. She moved deliberately, the bulk of the aircraft forming a wall between the seals and the oncoming fire. Miggs groaned from the co-pilot seat. Captain, this is insane. We can't hold them off forever. Kane didn't answer at first. Her eyes were locked on the extraction zone. The seals were moving, crouched low, under the cover of the Apache's shadow. We hold them, she said quietly. Every second counts. Tracer fire slammed against the Apache, shaking it violently. Kane fired the cannon in short bursts, sending rounds over enemy positions, forcing them to hesitate. Each shot burned through the last of her remaining ammo. Rourke's voice crackled through the static, urgent and raw. You're not making it out, Kane. Pull back. You'll then make it worth it, she replied calmly. Her jaw was tight, her hands locked on the controls. Just keep moving. Lightning flashed above, briefly illuminating the canyon and showing enemy fighters frozen in the Apache's shadow. Kane dipped the nose of the aircraft, hovering low, letting the rotors pound the ground. Dust and debris swirled around them like a storm she controlled. Miggs gripped the console, blood smeared across his temple. It's over, he said, voice shaking. Kane shook her head. Not yet. They're still breathing. That's enough for me. The seals moved closer to the evac zone, ducking behind rocks and sandbags. Kane's last rounds were gone. The cannon clicked empty. She flicked switches, trying to coax life from the malfunctioning systems, but they refused. No matter. She leaned forward, deliberately placing the Apache in the kill zone, drawing all enemy fire toward herself. Missiles streaked past. Bullets slammed against the armor. The helicopter shuddered under the assault, but Kane held steady. Every movement was deliberate, every second measured. Rourke's voice cut through again, tense with disbelief. You're insane. Pull out now. Kane's lips pressed into a thin line. "Pull out," she said quietly. "No, we're finishing this." They get out. That's what matters. The SEALs scrambled into the open for the evac chopper, shielded by the storm of sand and fire Kane controlled. Each second she held the kill box, each maneuver and burst of gunfire gave them a better chance. She could feel the weight of the storm and the enemy pressing against every rotor blade. But she didn't waver. She didn't blink. The Apache was a wall, a shield, a lifeline, and she would not move until every last SEAL was safe under the chopper's rotors. Her eyes narrowed on the extraction zone. The SEALs were moving. The evac chopper was descending, and Kane stayed in the kill box, calm, fierce, unyielding, the line between survival and annihilation. The cannon clicked empty. Kane's hands stayed tight on the cyclic, eyes scanning the canyon below. Every instrument flickered or died. Half the panels were dark. The Apache groaned as engines strained, warning lights blinking red. Miggs slumped in the co-pilot seat, voice weak. "Captain, no ammo. No systems. We're done." Kane shook her head. "Not yet." Her fingers moved over the comm switches. She tapped a sequence, broadcasting fake chatter, pretending multiple aircraft were still in the area. She switched the lights, throttled the engines, and rocked the Apache just enough to mimic maneuvering. "Give me eyes on them," she muttered. The canyon below shifted. Enemy fighters hesitated, unsure where she was or how many she had. Miggs blinked at her. "You're bluffing them?" "Exactly," Kane said, jaw tight. "We've got one shot. Make it count." Lightning flashed across the canyon, and Kane reached for the flare release. She armed it carefully, then fired. A bright streak arced toward the enemy positions, exploding in a flash of white light. Shadows flinched. Gunfire faltered. A few figures ducked behind cover, blinded by the sudden brilliance. "Go!" Kane whispered into the headset. "Move now." Below, Rourke's team scrambled, sprinting toward the evac chopper while Kane's flare masked their movements. The chopper's rotors whipped sand into clouds, hiding the SEALs completely. Kane adjusted the Apache slightly, using the storm of dust and debris to maintain the illusion of multiple aircraft. Miggs coughed. Blood streaked across his temple. "Captain, the engines." "Don't care," Kane said sharply. "They're clear. That's what matters." The evac chopper lifted, climbing steadily above the canyon floor. Kane's bluff, the flare, and the Apache's shadow had bought them just enough time. Her heart thumped, but she didn't relax. The engines were screaming under strain, warning lights still flashing, and half the systems dead. She exhaled slowly, whispering for the first time in hours, "You're clear. That's all that matters." Miggs leaned back, exhaustion overtaking him. "Captain, I've never seen anything like this." Kane didn't smile. Her eyes remained on the evac chopper, now climbing higher. "I'm not done yet," she said quietly. "Finish the line first." The storm still howled around them. Sand whipped across the canopy, and lightning split the sky. Kane adjusted the throttle to coax the last drops of power from the engines, keeping the Apache steady. Every movement was deliberate, every second critical. Miggs muttered under his breath, shaking his head. "We won't make much farther." "Far enough," Kane said, eyes flicking to the now safe SEALs. "They're alive. That's all that matters." She leaned back slightly, closing her eyes for a moment. Relief hit her, faint but real. The SEALs were safe. The evac chopper climbed, and Kane's bluff, her flare, and her unyielding focus had made it happen. She whispered again, firmer this time, "You're clear. That's all that matters." For the first time tonight, she allowed herself a single, steady breath. The Apache was dying. The mission had succeeded, and she was still alive to see it. The Apache slammed into the ridge just beyond the canyon rim. Metal screeched and twisted. Fire erupted along the fuselage. Sand and smoke filled the air. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. Kane coughed, pressing herself against the twisted metal. Heat licked her gloves. The cockpit was shattered, instruments sparking. She forced her jaw to unclench and took a shaky breath. "Migs?" she rasped, voice raw. He groaned, half buried under a panel, blood streaked across his temple. "Aria, I think we're done for," he said, eyes barely open. Kane's hands moved instinctively. She dragged him free, ignoring the fire snapping around them. Every muscle burned, but she refused to stop. She hauled him out of the wreckage, settling him behind a low boulder just as a tongue of flame licked the twisted rotor blades. "Stay down," she said, pressing a hand to his chest to keep him still. "We're not done yet," he coughed, wincing. You keep saying that. And yet, I keep saying it because it's true," Kane said sharply, brushing soot from his jacket. "We survive. That's the rule. Always." The horizon began to glow. Dawn broke across the desert, washing the sand and rocks in pale gold. Smoke from the wreck trailed into the sunrise, curling toward the sky like a signal. Kane squinted, letting the light wash over her face. She reached into her pocket, pulling out the distress beacon. Her fingers trembled as she activated it. The small device blinked red, sending out a steady pulse into the dawn. Migs groaned again, trying to sit up. "You really think anyone's going to find us out here?" Kane gave him a brief glance, eyes sharp and unwavering. "They will. And even if they don't, we're alive. That's the point." He tried to smile weakly. "You never quit, do you?" Kane exhaled slowly, letting some of the tension leave her body. "Not when there's work to do," she said quietly. "And when someone's counting on you, never." Around them, the desert was quiet except for the hiss of the cooling wreckage and the distant call of birds waking to dawn. Kane pressed herself back against the rocks, shielding Migs from the burning debris. She glanced at the horizon again, watching the smoke drift into the early light, a sign that they had survived, that the fight wasn't completely over, but that at least this battle was won. Migs coughed, closing his eyes for a moment. "Thanks, Aria, for everything." She offered a faint, tight-lipped smile. "Don't thank me, just survive. That's the mission now." The sun climbed higher, warming the desert floor. Kane shifted, keeping her hands on Migs, keeping them both alive. Fire crackled behind them, smoke curling into the sky. Dawn had come, and they had risen from the wreckage, battered but unbroken. She whispered softly, more to herself than anyone else. "We're still here. That's all that matters." And for the first time in hours, Kane allowed herself to sit back, letting the weight of survival settle over her, listening to the desert waking around them. Hours later, the distant hum of rotor blades cut through the desert silence. Kane squinted against the bright sun climbing above the blackened horizon. The evac team from Rourke's squad appeared first, moving cautiously over the scorched sand. "Captain Kane," one of them called, rushing forward. Relief was written on their faces. Kane straightened slowly, dust and soot clinging to her gear. Migs leaned weakly against her side, but she held him upright. "I told you we'd make it," she said quietly. The team helped Migs toward the transport, checking him for injuries, while Kane stayed by the Apache. The wrecked bird was twisted and blackened, a testament to the chaos they had survived. Flames had died down, leaving only smoke curling into the pale sky. Command transport arrived next, skimming low across the desert. Officers jumped out, expecting the worst. Their eyes widened as they took in the scene. One Apache, burned and battered, and its pilot standing beside it, alive. Colonel Shaw strode forward, face pale and rigid. "Captain Kane," he said, voice tight. We thought. No one left behind, sir," Kane interrupted calmly, her eyes on the horizon. "Mission complete." Shaw stared at her, speechless. The words hung in the air, as heavy as the smoke rising from the wreckage. He finally found his voice. "You saved them all?" She nodded once. "They were pinned. No air support could land. So we made them think they had more than they did. I got them out." Rourke approached, saluting without a word. Kane returned it with a brief nod. The unspoken gratitude passed between them said more than any speech ever could. Miggs shifted, glancing at her. Captain, I think you might actually be impossible. Kane let out a short, dry laugh. Focus on surviving first, Miggs. Then we can talk about impossible. Shaw's eyes swept the canyon, then back to her. The seals. All accounted for? Yes, sir. All alive, she said. Her gaze returned to the blackened horizon. The desert still scarred from battle, dust rising from distant rocks. The faint curl of smoke from her Apache still a warning and a memory. A junior officer approached, carrying a comm device. Captain, evac team's ready. Do you want to leave now? Kane shook her head slowly, just once. No, I want to watch them safe first. Then we go. The SEALs climbed into the transport, murmuring thanks and checking one another over. Kane watched each one, silent, letting a small measure of relief wash over her. The line had held. Everyone had made it. Shaw finally exhaled, turning away from the Apache. Captain Kane, you've redefined courage today. She tilted her head, a faint shadow of a smile. Not courage, sir. Just doing my job. No one left behind. That's what matters. The desert stretched black and gold before her. Smoke rose in thin lines from the wreckage. Kane adjusted her harness, shoulders stiff but unbroken. The line had held. The mission was done. She whispered softly, more to herself than anyone else. Mission complete. And as the transport lifted off, she stayed a moment longer, watching the horizon, the wrecked Apache, and the men she had saved. The desert was quiet now, but the line had been held, and she had stood it. If you loved Kane's impossible mission and want to see more edge-of-your-seat rescues, hit like and subscribe. Every story like this is just one click away. Don't miss the next hero who refuses to leave anyone behind.